Okay, welcome everybody to our Ashtanga Yoga conference. This is the first conference we've had since last month, so I'm delighted to have you all here with me today. Thank you for joining me. I have the screen share up today because during our conference, I want to be able to have a nice talk about the 8 limbs of practice, what brings us to our mats. And I'm going to be giving us a little bit of tools here, some Sanskrit diacritical markings so we can sharpen our skills as we chant as well. So let's begin here with the invocation. You can see if you don't want to watch the screen and see the Sanskrit markings, then you don't have to by all means. But if you would like, they're here for you. So let's bring our hands to Anjali Mudra, invoking the spirit of change. We begin by chanting the sound of Om, the sacred pranava, bringing us closer to the self, closer to the divine world around us every time we chant Om. And we'll chant this together. Om Vande Gurunam Charanaravindaye Sandarshita Swatma Sukhavabodhe Nishreyase Jangalikayamane Samsara Hala Hala Moha Shantye Abahu Purushakaram Shankachakrasi Dharinam Sahasra Shirasam Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim. Om. Wonderful. So when we chant the invocation, I hope that when you get on your mat, when you start your practice and you begin to chant, you're thinking about these 2 parts to this chant. The first part is about how we accept that we're ready for change. We're saying, I bow down, Vande Gurunam, to the lineage of teachers or to a source that's going to help me, change me. Yep. Sandarshita Swatma Sukhava Bodhe, so that I can find some new things about myself. Now I need to have a teacher. So that's the other part about this first part. It says, I need to have this Jangalikaya Mane, the one who's going to give me the right amount of dosage for what I need to learn. So that's why it's really good to do that shopping and find that teacher and find the style that suits you so that you can have a little bit of devotion to that. Like you care about it and they care about you. And they're going to remove the samsara, this deep imprints that are hala hala, that are repetitive. It's continuously keeping us in this state of right here, moha. So by knowing this, understanding this line, samsara, hala hala, moha shantye, so that through my relationship with my practice and my teacher, that I can be removed from this delusion towards shanti, peace. So you're accepting that I am here on this path for change, right? The second part, Abahu Purushakaram, this is all about Patanjali. Then we've chosen our teacher. Here it is. The one who's the Purusha. There's that special word. Purusha. Let's say that a couple times. It's fun. Purusha. What's the S doing? It gets to go back. So by understanding what Purusha is, the one who is the divine self, the cosmic Om, the cosmic divine self. And that is the self in you, that one that we want to get more access to. He has a conch and a wheel and a sword to bring us dharinam. What is this word? This word is one of the 8 limbs. So he's there to help guide us on our study. Dharana, dhyana, dharana, concentration. So he's there to bring us in concentration. And Sahasra Shirasam Shvetam, the one with all the lights, Pranamami, I bow down to you, Patanjali. So this is very important before we start our 8 limb talk and to get us inspired to practice, because There are two chants. One of the first one, Vande Gurunam Chanar Vinde, it has a different kind of feel to it. It's got like this rhythm and pace. And then when you get down here, it's Abahu. It's a different kind of feeling and rhythm. This chant goes to the chant to Patanjali. And this chant up here is from the Yoga Taravalai. So we took two chants and put them together. Now, why would Pattabhi Jois want us to look to Patanjali? Because he knew he wasn't going to be around forever. And as students of Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga, the style of yoga we're doing on our mats, which comprises of drishti, bandha, breath, meditation, and vinyasa. Those are the 5 allies of Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga. So that's what we're doing. But that's the physical part that's bringing us towards the internal self. But what are we doing off the mat? We're doing Patanjali Yoga. We're being guided to learn what Ashtanga Yoga means. So Pattabhi Jois could have called his style anything. Jois Yoga, Pattabhi Jois Yoga. No, Ashtanga Yoga, because he's always mapping us back to learning the philosophy, the backbone that's going to support us in our habits, in our ideals, in more like our moral values, how we're acting off the mat, so that when we get on the mat, the practice is easier. Meditation comes easier because we're living our 8 limbs. So it's inevitable that you're going to start to tip away at learning the 8 limbs. If you haven't learned them yet, this is a really good start. Okay, so what are we going to do when we learn the 8 limbs? We have to understand that through anushthanad, through the practice of learning the 8 limbs, ashudikshaye, jnanadiptir aviveka kyatehe. What happens in this Sutra 228? It's saying that very specifically that the impurities, ashuddhi kshaye, are destroyed. So what are impurities? Doubt, restlessness, fear, pain. Those are all, they kind of go away as we start to practice the 8 limbs. And jnana diptir, the light, actually a lamp, diptir, of knowledge, jnana, comes on because we're more awakened and we become the aviveka. We become the all-knowing yogi that's seeking this discriminative wisdom. Okay, so this is the first sutra where he's saying through anushthanad, yoga anga, through the limbs of yoga, through practicing those limbs, things are going to change. So it's not really going to change by learning Garbha Pindasana. It might a little bit, but really at the end of the day, what's really going to change about your Garbha Pindasana is slowing down your practices, your asana practice, looking at where we need to open our hips, looking at how we can soften, looking how we can round, how we can stand straight. So there's some physical things that have to happen, but the more interesting things are the internal things that have to happen in order for us to get our hands through our legs. Our diet, maybe, how we start to look inward a bit more instead of outward. And these are parts of the 8 limbs. What are the 8 limbs? They're yama. You can say them together. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhayo, which is the sandhi, just changed it, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Ashtau, 8 angani, limbs. So the 8 limbs are yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. Boom. Those first 4, and we'll add pratyahara in there, 5. They're bhyantaras. They're the external limbs. This is the stuff we do on the mat. But they're also stuff that how we act. So yama is how we act around others. They have 5, right? There's 5 yamas. Yama, to hold back or have abstentions. What's that mean? To maybe listen and watch before we react. Non-violence, ahimsa. Asat-satya, to maintain truthfulness. We'll go through these very, very, very in detail today. Asteya, to refrain from stealing. Brahma, God, chariot. God and walking with God, celibacy. Retaining what's potent in the body. And aparigraha, refrain from hoarding. Or how about greedlessness, not being greedy? Okay, or not needing more than you actually need, not taking more than you actually need. Okay, so these are the yamas. They're the great vow. Mahavratam. Mahavratam. No matter where you're from, no matter how great at yoga you get, we're always practicing this great vow. Okay, so why would we all people want to do it? Because these are your moral values of how you treat your others and yourself. And how we can put these in your life is, if you are not sure about them, make them into your own words, like nonviolence. How could I be less violent? Well, I could not honk at the horn when I see that guy, he cuts me off. You know, you can maybe not use the horn, or maybe not push through the pain, maybe when there is something uncomfortable or sharp and hot and bright in your practice. Or how could I be nonviolent by not returning that phone call with someone that is really, really disturbing me? And how can I handle that in a different way? Wait 24 hours. Refraining, watching a bit more. Satya, how can I be more truthful? Can I be more honest with my actions? How can I not steal? Well, maybe it's not really stealing, like such as taking someone else's things, but taking someone else's ideas or copying. And to walk with God, you can choose how that suits you. And then aparigraha, how can you be less greedy? How much more do you really need? Okay, so we can apply all of these to everything, to our diet, to our actions, to our asana practice. That's why we wouldn't want to kind of take a bunch of asanas that we're not really ready for. Sometimes it's better to have less and more. So that's yama. Now, niyama is the second limb. This is more about how you take care of yourself and others. This one is very interesting. Shaucha, okay, internal cleanliness. Are your thoughts sukha? Are they happier? And if they're not, and if you're always thinking in these antarayas and these obstacles, or feeling doubt or regression or negativity, go back to thinking, I can have some sweet thoughts and be clean. I don't have to think in the gutter all the time. And your physical body, you can also clean that up by asana, doing your pranayama and asana practices. Your diet as well. Do we need to eat so much or drink so much? Watch what we do. Santosha, contentment. Tapaha, austerities. These are the 3 Kriya yogas. Tapa, svādhyāyā, and ishvara pranidhānyāni. These are the recipe for your yoga of action. Action towards yourself. Tapaha, austerities could be anything. It could be you getting up at rules and having a wake up. I do that. You know, turning off your electronics at a certain time. Just pulling back a bit more, refraining, having a little bit less. More is better theory, less is better theory. And svādhyāyā, study of the self and the sacred text. I'm going to talk about this one a lot today. And ishvara pranidhānāni, devotion to the divine. So if that word means too much, like devotion to the divine, how about just having this respect for all around the world, everything around you? It could be and is magical, potent. Pattabhi Jois was famous for saying, God is everywhere. So where can we have that equanimity for all things, all beings? And that brings us more into this feeling of, there's magic and there's God, there's good everywhere. Okay, so this is a niyama. Let's just try to say this really tricky word and learn how to say it. Niyamaha. Niyamaha. Because it's got this funny H with a dot. And that's called a visarga. Don't worry so much about it. But if you're getting into Sanskrit and you want to really study, the A with the long means it's long. Niyamaha. And then repeat it. The long A after the H. Okay, so those are the first 2 limbs. Those are very difficult to actually carry out. And most people in Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga were just kind of stuck at those first 4 limbs. learning how to be nice to people, kind to ourselves, not steal. These are just very basic, but they're actually harder than we think to do. Then asana. Let's go back to that limbs. What's the asana? This one, we know this one. Asana, posture. Postures to be steady, easy. That's all day long. Let's say you do this beautiful samasthiti integrity asana practice, then you all of a sudden get to work and there you are. Hunched over like a troll. No. Keep the samasthiti integrity all day long, because that asana practice on the mat is just a part of it. Notice how you're standing. If you're carrying your child on one hip, the asana, it should be steady and easy. And that means all day long. Watch your posture. Watch how you're carrying yourself. Watch your eyes. Are they feeling angry? That's part of your asana, your structure. Your samasthiti integrity also includes how you're seeing the throat, the palate, the whole part of you is sama, is insane, right? Pranayama, the fourth one, that's breath retention or elongating your lifespan. Same. You're breathing short and quick throughout the day. Think about the day more than what's happening on your mat. You know your practice is sweet. I know all of you really well. Your practices are gorgeous. But what goes on the rest of the day? Are you... So keep the same feeling of slowing the breath down. Keep the bandhas on once in a while throughout the day. Watch what happens when you are in that chair slouching, all the bandhas went. Keep an activity of alertness and awakeness through the spine. Okay, and last one, the fifth limb, pratyahara. What is this? This is sense withdrawal. So that is what it's supposed to mean. But what is it really? It's just going more into the tapaha, more into the austeric practice of removing what's not serving you in your life and moving away from it inward towards you. So pratyahara means sense withdrawal. It should more think of turn it off. Don't look. Not engage, but don't choose to go to places that don't serve us. Inward looking. Okay, these are the 5 external limbs. These ones are more practical. The next 3, dharana, concentration, dhyana, and samadhi are concentration, meditation, and absorption. They don't really work unless the other 5 are established. In fact, most people don't really even know that they have a special name. They're called samyamaha or sayamaha. They actually have a special word. All 3 together come at once. But because we don't go, okay, now I'm concentrating. Okay, now I'm going to meditate. Now I'm going to absorb the self. It's like, it's all happening at once. Brilliant. It's just, there it is. And in the Yogamala, Pattabhi Jois uses one of the allies, right? He uses dhyana, meditation. So meditation is one of the 5 allies that we do when we do Surya Namaskara. Vinyasa, bandha, breath, drishti, dhyana, meditation. And it's just, what are we meditating upon? I don't know, you tell me. That's the stuff that you want to know. What are you meditating upon when you're doing your practice? You're just like, Angustama, thumbs. You're all of it. It's all happening at once. So it's one big meditation. You're not going, now bandhas, now thinking. It's like less thinking, more feeling. That's dhyana meditation. Okay, and then samadhi is just your sense of absorption with the self, correct? So for me, these last ones, concentration, dhyana, meditation, that is your goal. Your goal is to get to this place where we are stopping the chitta, that mind-filled chattering, and to get to this place of it's all happening at once. I'm feeling, I'm listening, I'm being intuitive. Okay, but if the breath is short and the pratyahara, we're not doing pranayama, and then the mind is not thinking about restraining, it's looking at the phone or looking over at yourself in the mirror. That's not withdrawing the senses. They're looking at the senses. Or your yama, your first limb, you got on the mat and you kicked the cat before you got on the mat because it was in your way. It's like, okay, let's think about it a little bit more. Okay, non-violence, turn the breath on, don't look at the mirror, turn the phone off. I'm ready for Dharana Dhyana Samadhi. Just, that's basic, don't kick the cat. I talked about this in our sutra class last week, and it was a good analogy for, it's easy to just let the emotions come and watch a little bit more, and they might not. Okay, so these are the yamas. We kind of said them all: ahimsa, satya, and I'm just going to go over one limb that I want to go over out of all of the 10. There's 5 yamas, 5 niyamas. And if you don't know them, it'd be really nice to review them, because they'll help you maybe open up a little bit more in your asana practice as well. But let's look at this fun one here. Just give me a second. Now, don't worry about this so much, but this is the one I want you guys to focus on, is the svādhyāyā. And I'm talking about this a lot. Svādhyāyā, iṣta-devatā, samprayogavā. So svādhyāyā has a couple important meanings. The first meaning is to study the self. And then the second meaning is to study the ancient texts. And I really like when I read something to you, which is so valuable that we get, is that when we're practicing svādhyāyā, more Edwin Bryant, the yoga scholar who's come to Edinburgh a couple times, I've gotten to meet him a few times. He signed my book, the big book he has. The front of it, he signed something for me. May you always have your iṣta-devatā. That was his. Hi, Sarah. Always find your iṣta-devatā. Out of all of the sutras, he quoted that one. And even in his book on page 277, he says, all yogis are expected to have an iṣta-devatā for the practice of yoga. And I'm not saying go out and buy a god, because iṣta-devatā is a deity, or something that you have a personal love investment, and you can ishvara, you can find that surrendering to, you bow down to it. And if he's saying a prerequisite for yoga is to have an iṣta-devatā, is that what it also means is that the meanings overlap. Because if we are saying, I'm practicing self-study, and I'm also studying the ancient texts, or I'm putting my mind on a mantra, which is a tool into the self, such as to a deity or a prayer, the meanings overlap, since the text or the mantra teaches you about yourself. So really, by studying the ancient texts, or to having the iṣta-devatā, they're just giving you the mirror. They're just holding it up for you. So I find that here it is. This is what those words mean. Svādhyāyā, through the study of the ancient texts and study of the self. One, there's a connection, samprayogahā. So yoga, union, sampra, a union with, right? One's desired iṣta-devatā, one's desired deity of choice. So how this is going to apply to our asana practice? Patanjali, right? If we're like saying, okay, every time, Abahu Purushakaram, we're actually chanting to Patanjali as being one of our iṣta-devatās, one of our sources to guide us. And could he be Shiva or Vishnu? No one really knows. Now, I'm not saying to chant to Patanjali as being your iṣta-devatā, but if you're still not sure and you're like, I don't really want to have a deity of choice, you're already doing it. You're already chanting to Patanjali every time you step on your mat. You're saying, bring that peace, bring that awareness into my practice so that I can change. I bow down to you. I surrender. Abahu Purushakaram. Vande Gurunam. I'm already doing it. So keep that up. Keep that spirit of excitement to the unknown, to the curiosity of why yoga is making you come back, is that it's experiential. It's making you see new things. And the more you read about it or study it, it's going to continue to show you the mirror into the self more. That's what svādhyāyā means. So we'll stop the share now, the screen share of the diacritical markings. Let's just open it up to the community and have some time together. You can have some questions for me or comments on the 8 limbs, or if that's totally new for you and you're thinking, oh, I need to go get a book, I'm ready, you know, then share about that, or tell me talk about what could maybe inspire you to get more interested in studying Ashtanga philosophy, yoga philosophy.
Hi, Sarah. Can I just ask a question? Hi. If you have, like, for teachers who have students who are maybe interested in finding a DT, or what kind of, how would you try and guide somebody if they're new and they're not sure? Like, is there any kind of,
That's a great question. So I think the main
maybe
one,
a more, not maybe a beginner, but somebody who's beginning in that path, maybe they practice a lot, but they're just not sure. Where would you, is there anything
you
simple?
know, I think you could start with Ganesha, because Ganesha removes the obstacles, and you could just teach a very simple Ganesha chant, such as Om Ganapataye Namaha. Like, I bow down to Ganesha, or I respect Ganesha. And that, doing a japa, a mantra over and over, that's easy. That's only 2 or 3 little words. And they do that through repetition. They're going to hear their breath more. They're going to connect to themselves. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye. They do it over and over and over and over and over. Wow, they found this form of meditation. Meditation, in the beginning, it's words. In the beginning, it's trying to memorize the right way, to feel it and sound it. But then later, it becomes more of understanding of themselves. So you could try that, a short mantra. Or you could do what I like to do, is you could start telling stories. And if you're thinking, I don't know any stories about the gods, then it could be any story that has to do with some sort of outcome where there's change, that they're, a lot of it is getting people to be curious and kind of interested in the unknown. There's a great book, I think the one that I think, I'll have to send you the name of the book, but there's a couple of great books out there that are just about the gods and goddesses that you could pick up that would help. Does that help, Joe? Anybody else? That's great questions.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And you could unmute yourself if you'd like. And it doesn't have to be about the 8 limbs. If you're thinking, I don't want to talk about that, and you have something else you want to talk about, yoga related, then go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll talk about that. Okay, let's go back to doing a little bit of singing and chanting, and let's go over a little bit more about these limbs. I think that would help a little bit. Okay, so let's go back to looking at, and we don't have to spend too much time on this, but let's look at chanting some of these. If we'll just go back to the ones that are helpful. And this could be also something that you could chant that would just help you learn more about the limbs, the yoga limbs. So let's start with 228 here. Okay, so let's chant this nice and slow, call and response. And then we'll get back to a little bit more discussion. Yoganga Anushtanad Ashuddhi Kshaye Jnana Deeptir Aviveka Kyatehe Yama niyamasana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhayo, angani, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, yamaha. Okay, that's a super couple more. Shaucha, santosha, tapaha, svādhyāyā, ishvara, pranidhanani, niyamaha. Okay, so those are the first 5, those are the first 2 limbs of the practice. And when you're thinking about your yoga practice, look at what happened the day before you got on your mat. And if you're thinking, well, okay, yesterday I felt like this, and so I kind of didn't do, then today, well, then if you're thinking, always it's good to like map back and look at what got you on the mat that morning, that day. Was it kind of like, I'm told to do it? She said it has to be 6 days. It's like, mm-mm. You want to be getting on the mat to investigate your higher self, to tapping into what is inside that is not heard. So with breathing and all of that. So when we look at why we would want to get on our yoga mat, we don't really want to follow some recipe so much that we're harming and we're not practicing ahimsa. We want to get on the mat because we're seeking the viveka kyatehe, the higher self, or the yogi with discrimination. So if that means you get on your mat and you need to just roll around like a potato because you didn't have a good day yesterday and you didn't eat the right things and you climbed a mountain with your children and you just have, that's your asana practice, breathing and setting yourself back into alignment. And then the following day, you might have more of a maybe Ashtanga vinyasa, fancy rule practice. And the rules are very valuable to have the rules because this keeps you going in a way where you transform your thinking that you can't into what you can do. So that's why the method is quite good. However, we don't want to follow it so much that we forget why we're doing yoga. The 8 limbs are there to guide us in that realization that we're doing yoga for samadhi, to bring about absorption of the self, not to put your leg behind your head. Although it's very cool, it's not the goal. Yeah, and laughing. Some people are laughing. They're like, but I really want to do that. I want to do that big pose. Believe me too. But is that a form of aparigraha? Or I want to eat it. I want to ingest. I want to take all the postures. I want them all. I'm the greedy blue monster. It's like in my kids' books. Blue monster wants it all, wants to eat all the poses. Well, if we're not absorbing them and quieting the mind down, all those poses aren't really going to help us find the true self. Okay. Now, one more limb. I think we have just got a little bit more time left that I want to share with you the little story. So, when I went to Philadelphia in 2010, 11, 12, that time, just before I moved to Edinburgh, I moved to Philadelphia. I was this little mountain girl, just this mountain person, living in the West my whole life. I've never lived in a big city. I always lived in the hills, in the forests. I moved to Philadelphia. Wow. I moved to Philadelphia, lived there to study with my teacher, David Grieg. And one of the questions I asked him, which was so much, I said, how about contentment? Contentment is one of the niyamas. Yeah. Shaucha, santosha. There it is, santosha, contentment. When are we content? What is it going to take for us to find that contentment, that total knowing of the self and being completely at ease? And he said to me something that struck these aren't the exact words, but something at this point that stuck with me for a very long time. We have found santosha when we no longer have raga attachment. When there's no more attachments to the outcomes of things or what we want. So when we take off that edge of being the blue monster where we're trying to consume asana or consume the practice, and we're just taking things a little bit less. We're still practicing with a sort of discrimination and the best of our ability, but we're not doing it so blindly where we forget about the goal of it is to non-attach to the outcome. Then the posture is just, you slip right in. We start to soften and things start to change. So contentment happens when there's no more attachment or hunger. That's what he told me. So I survived the city, but here I am in another big city. Haven't gotten back to my forest yet, someday. So anybody have a nice story they want to share before we wrap things up? That could be about the 8 limbs or not? Very quiet yogis. Okay, so if you're curious, and we'll kind of wrap things up, it's before 9:15. If you're curious about the 8 limbs or you're really not sure, that's a book I recommend you get. This is almost too much of a book, actually. But this one, the 8 limb Ashtanga, I say Ashtanga, but it's all about Ashtanga yoga because he's talking about Patanjali yoga, which is the yoga of Kriya yoga, the yoga of action. Yeah, we are doing something when we're doing our practices. We're acting in tapa, svādhyāyā, and ishvara pranidhāni. We need to have those austerities, tapaha. We need to have svādhyāyā, self-study, and we need to have the devotion to our iṣta-devatā, or our devotion to that all things are good around us. But this is a good book for a beginner. Yeah, someone's unmuting themselves. Yes, Kevin.
Hi, Sarah. It's lovely to talk to you again. Someone said to me the other day that the concept of when you practice, you should only practice for as long as you can concentrate for. So you should only do a practice that's as long as you can keep the focus. When your mind starts to feed the cat or do something, goes elsewhere. Do you think that's right? Or
Absolutely. I think you're spot on. In fact, that's the maturity of the practitioner that is actually growing, correct? With time, your practice should actually be only 1 hour. In the beginning, we want to learn the postures to get the therapy of it, the breath right, all this stuff, but we don't need to do so much asana as we think. In fact, but we need the base to get to that place. So for example, if our hip is very tight, it might take us learning all of the primary series to get that hip to open. If our back is so stiff, it might take us all of the second series to get that back open. Once the back is open, once the hips open, enough. Primary immediate series might be plenty or even more yoga than anybody would ever need. And when the mind starts to travel, like, I'm really hungry. That happens to me. Like, 7 a.m. is when the class starts. I'm wrapping my practice up between 6:30 and 6:45. I'm either thinking, get one more in. I'm still hungry for more. I want more. Or I'm starting to think about that tea or that cup of coffee. Definitely it's over. Mm-hmm. Very good, Kevin. And I think that's not for beginners aren't going to understand that. The beginners in the beginning think, I need to do all these poses. I would say that most people I meet as a yoga teacher, I say that they think they have to do the entire primary series to be a good Ashtangi. You don't. You just do as much as you can. And Dina, our connected teacher, you and I, who are so connected to Dina, she would say, practice as long as you can. Endure as much as you can. And then when you can't take any more, you stop.
She always says there should be a little bit of struggle, doesn't she? You know,
she always talks about the graceful struggle. So when you're jumping through and you're like, my asana is too big, what does Dina say? Graceful struggle. You pick that up and you struggle, get it through. And I love that about her because she would say, I met her and I thought, oh, I'm going to meet this lovely teacher that's going to just stroke me. And she's going to be my balanced, my strict David Garrigues. I'm going to meet this lovely Dina and she's going to just balance it out. No, sir. David is the soft one. Dina is the hard one. And why would Dina be so strict? Is because she had to work very hard.
Yeah.
Everything about her body, everything about her is just about asana was very difficult right from day one. So I think we get surprised in our journeys. We think, I need this to support that. Here I am. I need this woman to kind of soften it out. But this is the thing. She'll sing to you, but she'll also beat you a bit with a stick.
Yeah. But she was the first one who ever talked to me or talked about how yoga affects your life off the mat. Everybody, all the other classes I'd done, it was just about doing, the postures. But she was the first one who ever who stood there and talked to me about, how it affects your life off the mat and how it should benefit your life and the people around you. It shouldn't just be about that hour and a half in that room.
Because it's not enough, is it? I mean, if you do a lot of stuff on your mat and you have this huge asana practice, but the rest of the day is just not so good, we have to really look at our actions. And all of us need to. And it's not like it's not a bad thing to be honest, satya, with how you're taking what you're doing in your life. And those are the things that help us become, I think, kinder, more generous people, because we're living our yoga a bit more, not just on the mat. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I'm so glad you said something, because it brings her up. I mean, I always talk about people when I teach, just like that. Why? That's my form of satya, truthfulness. But I don't really want to steal from my teachers. I want to share what they've taught me, and then how I've incorporated that, and then share that with you. That's the sign of being a teacher. You have a teacher, you have a practice, and you like people. So you need to share what they've taught you, but you got to make sure you quote them and respect them. And I'm always like, everybody, you guys ready for your 100 breath headstand? Because she'll keep you up there for 100 breaths. Or is everybody ready for their 45-minute shoulder stand? David will keep you up there for 45 minutes, my teachers. Now, lastly, before we wrap things up, this is such a nice comment. Thank you, Kevin. Is anybody noticed that when they get to the finishing series, the mind is done? And that's really important that I pick this up, because I watch sometimes in lead primary and opposed to Mysore. I keep you up in shoulder stand, headstand purposely for a long time, because that should be a very significant part of your practice. So rather than doing a lot of standing and middle postures, such as the series you're working on, and then just kind of, I'll just do a quick shoulder stand and call it good. Like, actually, really save some vitality, some virya, potency for those finishing postures, because they are the ones that are reversing the body's natural downward flow. The inversions are about the nervous system, settling ourselves down, and that electrical vitality that yogis have, where they're standing upright, they're bright in their faces, they've been upside down a long time. So as you progress, Nancy Gilgoff told me once, I saw her 10 years ago. It was kind of recent in terms of like the yoga world. Like I saw her recently, but last time I saw her was at the Ashtanga yoga conference in San Diego. And she said, "Sarah, how are you?" I said, "Nancy, how are you doing?" We had this great reconnection. And Nancy said that Pattabhi Jois told her when she turned 60, "Nancy, you practice 1 hour every day." And what is that hour? 30 minutes of it is in inversions. So you might be moving in that direction of like less asana, more pranayama, more inversions, or meditation. That makes sense as we age, especially the inversions. So don't rush those inversions. They're just as important as getting the hip or the back open. Okay, everybody. I want to see that in the Mysore room a little bit more time. So if you're in pain up there, your neck or your back, then modify, change it. Legs up the wall, Viparita Karani. Lots of different ways to do your shoulder stand and your headstand, just as long as you're inverted is what's important. Yeah. Okay, anybody have anything else to say? Anything they want to share? All right. Wonderful. Let's have our closing prayer together. Let's chant it with our hands to Anjali Mudra. Before we chant, let's take that moment to, with your hands to Anjali Mudra, let the eyes close, feeling grateful for the lineage around you, the system of yoga that you're a part of, that the community you've chosen to be with, that's filled with health and wellness and happiness, bringing you towards your higher self. That's why we chant the closing prayer. May that continue. May that relationship, may all the people around you be well, and may we take our 8 limbs off the mat now from this chant. Take a deep inhale. Om Swasti Prajabhyaha Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahishaha Gu Brahmanebhyaha Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And we chant this prayer at the end of our practices to say, may my practice bring me peace to myself, peace to others, peace to the unknown. And that's why we chant it at the end, because it's sealing the deal, if you will. And now that we've done that work inside, let's carry that out as we go into the world around us. Super. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you again next month for our free conference that happens the first Friday of the month. And if you felt like you could have talked some more, send me some questions. I love to hear from you.
Sarah.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you everyone for joining. Wonderful. Thank you, Amy, Taylor, and Al, Marita, Dee, Kevin, Janet, Caleb, Fiona. Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.